In October 2010, a man with a tense expression hurried off a plane. Once he had settled into a taxi leaving the airport, he allowed himself a triumphant smile. Deep down, he believed he had just pulled off the perfect crime, a plan carefully crafted over months, tight enough that even if the bodies were eventually found, the police would have nothing to go on. Asterisk today, we're revisiting a case that once shocked the public. The killer was cunning, meticulous in every move, and managed to stay steps ahead of investigators. If not for a single photo, taken by a police officer more than 1,500 kilometers away from the crime scene, the mystery might have remained unsolved forever. The crime took place in Perth, the capital of Western Australia. Despite being Australia's fourth largest city, Perth is often called the most isolated major city in the world due to its vast distance from other urban centers. In recent years, the Chinese community there had grown rapidly, with more Asian supermarkets, restaurants, and a solid education system attracting many families from China. But it was in this seemingly peaceful city that the story took a dark and tragic turn. Qiong Yan and Yang Zhao, a married couple of Chinese descent, lived in the Mindarie suburb of Perth. Their lifestyle was comfortable, not because of high-paying jobs, but because of Yang Zhao's powerful family background. His mother, Tai Pei Song, was the president of a large construction company in China. His father held a government position, and rumors swirled that his uncle was a high-ranking official. This meant Yang Zhao grew up surrounded by wealth and influence. Like many elite families in China, his parents placed great emphasis on education. They sent him to study abroad in Australia and even purchased a luxurious home for him in Mindarie. It was through family connections that Yang Zhao met Qiong Yan, a woman from Liaoning, China, born in 1983. She was 8 years younger than him. While she didn't come from a powerful background like Yang, Qiong Yan still led a relatively comfortable life. She arrived in Australia as an international student, carrying with her dreams and high hopes for a bright future. Their relationship developed naturally in a foreign country. Meeting someone from the same culture who spoke the same language felt rare and comforting. Yang Zhao was considered handsome, and Qiong Yan was strikingly beautiful. It didn't take long before they fell in love and got married in April 2008 at the Perth Convention and Exhibition Center, with a lavish wedding that left their friends in awe. After the wedding, their life as a young couple seemed picture perfect. Thanks to the immense wealth of Yang Zhao's family, money was never a concern. They traveled frequently, hosted extravagant dinner parties, and enjoyed what seemed like a dream life. That joy only grew in 2009, when they welcomed their first daughter, a baby girl named Kiki. Her arrival brought overwhelming happiness to both families. Yang Zhao's mother, Tai Pei Song, flew to Australia immediately to help her son take care of his newborn daughter. But her presence would mark the beginning of a turbulent chapter, one filled with tension between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. At first, their life together was peaceful enough, but over time, cracks began to appear in the couple's relationship. Both Yang Zhao and Qiong Yan were only children, raised with a lot of attention and little compromise, and neither was used to backing down. The arrival of Kiki added more pressure. Life became busier, and arguments between the couple started to happen more often. Tai Pei Song's involvement in their personal life only made things worse. She constantly sided with her son, leaving Qiong Yan feeling increasingly isolated in her own home. In August 2010, the tension in the family reached a breaking point. Their marriage had collapsed beyond repair, and both parties began divorce proceedings. Qiong Yan decided to leave the villa in Mindarie and moved into a small apartment in Balga, a suburb in northern Perth, taking her daughter Kiki with her. For a while, she even returned to China with Kiki, hoping to escape the growing pressure. But the real nightmare began when Kiki was kidnapped in Shenyang, China. Qiong Yan was devastated. She soon realized her daughter's passport and identification were missing. It didn't take long for her to figure out who was behind it: Yang Zhao. With no other options, She turned to the Australian embassy and Chinese authorities for help. After extensive efforts, officials discovered that Yang Zhao had secretly taken Kiki back to Perth. Kyung-yan rushed back to Australia to regain custody of her daughter. Her mother, Rong Mei-yan, flew in from China to support her and help care for Kiki. But Yang Zhao's family didn't give up easily, using the excuse of visiting their granddaughter. They frequently took Kiki for several days at a time before returning her. The custody battle dragged on the surface. It looked like a standard post-divorce conflict, two parents fighting for their child, eventually headed to court. But reality took a darker turn, one marked by violence and bloodshed. September 30th, 2010. That morning, Kiki had been picked up by her grandmother for a visit. Around 7:30 p.m., Kyung-yan and her mother were driving back to their apartment. As they pulled into the garage, a white Mitsubishi suddenly appeared behind them, blocking their exit. Almost simultaneously, a silver Mercedes pulled in front, trapping them in a pincer-like formation. Sensing danger, Rong Mei-yan stepped out of the car to confront the situation. But before she could react, a man suddenly charged at her with a sledgehammer and struck her on the head. The force of the blow, combined with the attacker's size and strength, left her helpless. Within seconds, she collapsed to the ground, lying motionless in a pool of blood. The man then pulled out a knife and turned toward Kyung-yan, who was still sitting in the car, frozen in fear. She screamed for help, but no one came. He lunged at her, stabbing her repeatedly. In moments, the inside of the car was covered in blood. It was a brutal, horrifying scene. After the attack, the killer quickly jumped into a car. Both vehicles sped away from the scene. Not long after, neighbors noticed something was wrong and immediately called the police. First responders arrived promptly. Unfortunately, Kyung-yan had already died from her injuries. Rong Mei-yan, her mother, had suffered severe trauma to the face. Though she was still breathing, doctors warned that even if she survived, she might remain in a vegetative state. Police launched an investigation right away. At the scene, they found a hammer covered in blood. But the killer had clearly planned everything carefully. He wore gloves and left no fingerprints or other physical evidence. Given the ongoing conflict between Kyung-yan and Yang Zhao, who were in the middle of a divorce, police immediately considered Yang Zhao a prime suspect. The next morning, they visited his home for questioning. However, Yang Zhao wasn't in Australia when the crime occurred. Only his mother and daughter, Kiki, were staying at the house. When questioned, his mother calmly told the police, "My son left for China on September 11th to visit family and hasn't returned." Police checked immigration records and confirmed that Yang Zhao had indeed left Australia on September 11th and had not come back. This gave him a solid alibi. But then came the question, if not Yang Zhao, who else would want Kyung-yan dead? Police dug deeper into Kyung-yan's personal life, hoping to find another lead. But the results showed little. She ran a small nail salon and lived a modest life. Aside from raising her daughter and attending English classes, she had few close friends and no known enemies. The only person she had ongoing disputes with was Yang Zhao. Despite having an alibi, the police still suspected that Yang Zhao might have hired someone to commit the crime. Upon further investigation, they discovered that Yang Zhao was not what he seemed. He was just a low-paid security guard who patrolled the neighborhood with a dog. But in reality, he owned 2 companies, 3 houses, and a silver Mercedes, which matched the description of one of the cars seen at the crime scene. These details confirmed that he was living a wealthy lifestyle supported by his family's fortune. Kyung-yan knew about her husband's considerable assets. During the divorce, she had demanded custody of their daughter, financial support, and a share of the property. That made the motive clearer. To avoid losing money in the settlement, Yang Zhao may have decided to eliminate her. Investigators also uncovered a suspicious connection between Yang Zhao and a massage parlor on Beaufort Street, known for adult services. He was a frequent visitor and reportedly close to the woman who ran the place. This raised further questions about his involvement in illegal activity. However, the woman insisted they were only friends and had no business ties, regardless of whether Yang Zhao was involved in any illegal activity. Police couldn't rule out the possibility that he orchestrated the attack. The biggest challenge now was either to break his alibi or to identify the actual killer. Investigators thoroughly reviewed CCTV footage from around the crime scene. They managed to capture images of two suspicious vehicles, but because of poor nighttime lighting, the cameras only recorded vague outlines of the cars. The drivers' faces remained unidentifiable. Footage revealed that the white Mitsubishi had been circling the area before the murder and had parked nearby for over 2 hours, as if waiting for Pyongyang to arrive before launching the attack. It was clear this was a meticulously premeditated killing. However, beyond identifying the two vehicles, the surveillance footage offered no breakthrough. Meanwhile, Pyongyang's mother remained in a coma, leaving the investigation at a standstill. In hopes of finding more leads, police returned to question Yang Zhao's mother, Tai Pei-song, but in a surprising move, on October 11, 2010, she secretly left Australia and returned to China with Kiki, completely cutting off contact with investigators. With no better option, police released the CCTV footage to the public. Hoping for new tips, the strategy paid off. A member of the public recognized the silver car in the footage as a 2003 Mercedes CLK 500. Only 20 of those vehicles were registered in Western Australia. After tracking ownership records, police confirmed that the vehicle belonged to Yang Zhao. It was immediately seized, however. The search of the car yielded no significant progress in the case. At this point, the Perth police were trapped in a frustrating dilemma. Yang Zhao remained their prime suspect, but he was now in China, out of reach. His airtight alibi prevented any arrest warrant, and without one, the Chinese authorities couldn't assist with his apprehension. Eventually, police managed to contact Yang Zhao directly, but he flatly denied all allegations and stated bluntly, "I plan to settle in China permanently. I have no intention of returning to Australia." That declaration brought the investigation against Yang Zhao to a halt. With no jurisdiction over him and no grounds for extradition, the case shifted. Focus to the white Mitsubishi, the mysterious car spotted at the scene, and the unidentified killer behind the attack. After conducting a wide search, police found that no local white Mitsubishi matched the one caught on camera. This led to a chilling theory. The killer may have come from far outside the area, and the vehicle wasn't registered in Perth, as previously mentioned. Perth is one of the most geographically isolated major cities in the world, with the nearest urban centers thousands of kilometers away. If Yang Zhao had hired someone from outside the region to drive all the way to Perth, carry out the murder, and then immediately leave the area, it would point to a horrifyingly well-executed plan. Following this lead, investigators uncovered a crucial clue. On September 24th, Yang Zhao had placed an ad in a Chinese-language newspaper in Sydney, looking to hire a long-distance driver to travel from Sydney to Perth. This detail raised immediate suspicion. Wasn't Yang Zhao supposed to have left Australia for China on September 11th? If so, why was he hiring the driver nearly 2 weeks later? Even more troubling, the murder occurred just 6 days after the ad was published. On September 30th, police decided to investigate the route from Sydney to Perth, a journey of more than 3,900 kilometers. The highway cuts through vast stretches of desert and empty plains, including the Nullarbor Plain, a famously remote area often called the Treeless Land. And it was in this desolate region that the case took a dramatic turn. A highway patrol officer named Robert recalled stopping a white vehicle on the Nullarbor Highway on the night of September 30th. What stood out to him was that he'd seen the same car just days earlier heading west toward Perth, but now it was coming back the other way. Robert found this odd. That stretch of road is grueling, and drivers don't usually make such quick round trips. He took a photo of the two men in the car and included it in his monthly patrol report, and then forgot about it. That is, until detective from Perth reached out for assistance. When he forwarded the image, the mystery unraveled instantly, because the man in the passenger seat was unmistakably Yang Zhao. This confirmed what investigators had long suspected. Yang Zhao had faked his alibi by flying to China on September 11th. But later, he secretly returned to Sydney, hired a driver on September 24th, and traveled across the country to Perth. He then hid out at his mother's house for several days, prepared weapons, and carried out the murder of Keong Yan on September 30th. That same night, he fled Perth, returned to Sydney, and then flew back to China. At this point, police no longer cared how he had re-entered Australia, whether it was with a fake passport or through illegal means. What mattered was that they now had indisputable photographic evidence placing him at the scene. Armed with this breakthrough, police obtained a warrant to search Yang Zhao's home on his laptop. They discovered that his gaming account had been active on September 29th and 30th. Even more telling, early in the morning on September 29th, the laptop's webcam had captured an image of Yang Zhao sitting directly in front of the screen. This proved that at the time of the murder, Yang Zhao had been hiding at his mother's house, which meant her earlier statement, claiming she hadn't seen her son since he left for China, was an outright lie. Investigators then turned to immigration records at Sydney Airport to determine how Yang Zhao had re-entered the country undetected. After careful review, they discovered he had used the passport of a friend with the surname Yuk, the same man who had been a groomsman at his wedding. Because the two shared similar facial features, and Yang Zhao had altered his appearance, he was able to bypass immigration checks without raising suspicion. With this final piece of evidence, police in Perth coordinated with Chinese authorities to move forward with his arrest. Previously, without strong proof, Yang Zhao had been living freely in China. Since Chinese authorities had no criminal records on him, they had no grounds to detain him. But once they learned of his illegal re-entry into Australia using a forged identity, they were able to temporarily hold him and begin their own investigation. By May 2014, after receiving the full body of evidence from Australian police, Yang Zhao was formally charged with the murder of his wife and the attempted murder of his mother-in-law. But the road to trial was far from simple. Yang Zhao was an Australian citizen. Keong Yan, the victim, remained a Chinese national. This created a rare legal dilemma. An Australian citizen had murdered a Chinese citizen on Australian soil. Although China and Australia had signed an extradition treaty in 2007, the treaty had never been ratified by the Australian government. That meant there was no legal foundation to extradite Yang Zhao back to Australia for trial. Australia hoped that China would agree to extradite him, but Chinese law stated otherwise. If a foreign national committed a serious crime outside of China and the victim was a Chinese citizen, then China had the right to prosecute the case itself. Australia initially opposed this approach. The country had abolished the death penalty years ago and had long pressured other nations to do the same. They feared that if Yang Zhao were tried in China, he could face capital punishment. After several rounds of tense diplomatic negotiations, the two countries finally reached a landmark agreement. No matter how serious Yang Zhao's crimes were, he would not face the death penalty. In May 2014, the Shanghai No. 1 Intermediate People's Court began the trial of Yang Zhao. Backed by irrefutable evidence from Australian authorities and thorough findings from Chinese investigators, the court found Yang Zhao guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison under Chinese law. Oddly, however, the verdict wasn't made public until 2016, 2 years after the trial. As for motive, the judge concluded that Yang Zhao had been unwilling to go through with the divorce. Fearing the loss of his vast wealth and custody of his daughter, he carefully planned and executed the murder of his wife. The case unfolded during a time when China and Australia had not yet officially ratified their extradition treaty. Despite that, both governments worked closely together to bring the case to justice. The successful resolution marked a breakthrough. in international legal cooperation and became a valuable case study in cross-border criminal investigation and prosecution. On September 23, 2016, nearly 6 years after the murder of Pyongyang, an unexpected twist unfolded at Perth Airport. Tai Pei-song, Yang Zhao's mother, was arrested by Australian police the moment she stepped off the plane, although the perpetrator had already been brought to justice. Authorities suspected Tai Pei-song of making false statements during the original investigation. She had confidently told police that her son had returned to China and never came back to Australia. In reality, Yang Zhao had secretly re-entered the country using a fake passport and had hidden in her Perth home for several days before carrying out the murder. It was clear she had knowledge of his movements. Beyond lying to authorities, Australian police also accused her of being an accomplice in the murder of Pyongyang. Faced with these serious charges, Tai Pei-song denied all involvement. Her defense attorney argued that if Yang Zhao had gone to such lengths to conceal his identity and secretly enter Australia, it made no sense that he would have informed his mother of his plan to kill his wife. Despite the initial headlines, legal proceedings against Tai Pei-song eventually faded from public view. Her final verdict remains unknown to this day. One lingering question remains: why did she risk returning to Australia at all? Years later, a theory emerged. She may have planned to secretly take her granddaughter Kiki out of the country. After the case was closed, Kiki, an Australian citizen, was placed in the care of the Department of Social Welfare. If Tai Pei-song's return was an attempt to retrieve the child, then it was a miscalculated decision. Perhaps she believed the case had been forgotten and that police were no longer watching her. But the moment she stepped off that plane, she was arrested. After some time under the care of social services, Kiki eventually found a new home with a kind and loving couple. Reports say the couple occasionally takes her back to China to visit her maternal grandparents. As for Yang Zhao's fortune in Australia, once he was sentenced to life in prison, what became of all that wealth? The answer was fairly straightforward, since Kiki is his legal heir. All of his assets legally passed to her. The Australian government auctioned off part of his estate and placed the funds in a trust to secure her future. Tragically, Pyongyang's mother, Rong Maiyan, never recovered from her injuries. Despite undergoing multiple treatments, she remains permanently disabled and unable to care for herself. Looking back, Yang Zhao believed he had orchestrated the perfect crime, a plan so meticulously designed it would leave no trace. But he overlooked one thing: even the most carefully calculated plans have cracks. Justice has a long memory, and the law has ways of catching up, no matter how far someone runs. This case exposed clear gaps in international legal cooperation. It raises the question: will Australia reconsider its stance on extraditing criminals to China in the future? And what about Kiki, now a child with dual cultural roots, a trust fund, and a new family? Will she be able to move beyond the trauma and live a normal life? What are your thoughts on this case? Let us know in the comments, and before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another case that needs to be heard.